All right, 10:36. I think we'll try and get started. Last couple people go on and take your seats. All right, so everyone, thank you so much for coming today, especially for making the trek out here in the hot weather. And I hope you're excited for our speaker today. So our speaker today, his name is Luis, and he is the co-founder and CTO of Novi Finance, a startup that is reimagining banking through automated financial management. And prior to this, Luis was the director of engineering for Reddit's AI efforts after stints as VP of engineering at Workpop, an LA startup, and Microsoft. Originally from Brazil, Luis can now be found exploring San Francisco with his Siberian Husky box.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, and so Luis's talk today is titled "What I've Learned About How Machines Learn." So everyone, please join me in a round of welcome of applause for Luis.
All right. Can you guys hear me okay? Is my mic? Mic. Oh. I can do both? Am I going to get feedback? Let's see. All right, cool. I'll use both of these now. So I'm Luis. Thank you for the intro. I'm actually going to be using my handy dandy clicker here. There's apparently a Google Chrome add-in that works as a clicker when you forget yours for a presentation like this. So just so you know. And it works. So like you said, I was originally from Brazil. Started out programming in BASIC. That's actually a picture of me. I have a lot less hair these days than I did back then. It's kind of what happens when you deal with computers your whole life for 15 plus, or now I guess 20 some plus years. But did computer engineering at University of Maryland, and actually it was a big campus. It's also a very big campus. So thank you again for coming all the way down here. It was quite a trek. I'm pretty sure a lot of you didn't realize how long it was, and once you're halfway in, you're like, all right, I just gotta go anyways, but thank you anyways. Worked at IBM for a little bit in the IT space, system administration, then Microsoft, where I spent 9 years, mostly in the data space, worked on Excel Online, Google Sheets before Google Sheets was out, then the Office Telemetry and Data team, so billion plus Office customers. We were in charge of getting all of their usage data back to Microsoft so that we could analyze things like call stacks for crashes, as well as verbatim feedback and qualitative feedback on how users were perceiving our products. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Then actually came down to LA, was down in Santa Monica at the startup called Workpop, essentially hiring services for the service economy as well as HR services. And until this month, I was down in San Francisco at Reddit, working on building out their AI and machine learning disciplines, until I finally took the plunge again into entrepreneurship and started this company, Novi Finance. I'll talk very briefly about that. Super early stage. We're doing our fundraising now. So the bulk of the talk is really going to be around the core stuff that we built over at Reddit. So this is my early days. I started actually, my first glimpse was in 2004 when I was doing neural networks at Maryland. And I tried to get a transcript in time. I'm going to get a screenshot of my transcript to add here. But took this class, showed up on the first day, didn't understand anything they said. Showed up on like the second class, like 2 days later, still didn't understand it, kind of stuck around with it for a while and eventually dropped out. So that was my first kind of foray or stint with ML. My read of it was this crazy academic exercise, a ton of math, and like at the end of an entire semester, I'm not going to be able to classify a trash can with more than like 40% accuracy. So it wasn't really that interesting to me at the time. I did love data, which is how at Microsoft I ended up getting into the Excel team, like building out Excel Online, working in the Access team, so the entire space and like the data BI times, until I switched over to do Office for iPad and iPhone V1. But it wasn't until about 2011 when I started using machine learning again. This was when we built this feature called Send a Smile. And anyone that has an Office build, we started out with beta customers and then made it broader, had a smiley or a frowny face at the top right of Office. You click on that, you get a text box, you type in whatever you want, you send that feedback directly to us. Now, Office has 1 billion plus customers, multiple languages, like you literally just cannot read all that feedback. So we said, okay, what are we actually gonna do about it? We started doing some early sentiment analysis on the feedback coming in, just to classify, is this negative or positive feedback? We love positive comments, but really we wanna spend our time on the constructive, on the negative ones, so that we can make our product better. So we did that. Also did this, use this tree map view. This is not the actual screenshot, because I didn't take one when I was back then. But essentially, it was a tree map that looked a lot like this. The size of the square was how many times people were complaining about that particular thing, or talking about that particular thing. And if it was green, it was positive. If it was red, it was negative. So essentially, you can just go to the big red boxes, figure out what they're talking about there, and try to address that feedback. We also did, I didn't mention it here, we worked with Bing very closely on some translation, because you get a lot of feedback that are in different languages. So we would translate it to English, then run the algorithms. At that time, it just still wasn't very useful to do that. There's just too many layers of interaction and too many opportunities for mistakes to be made in the translation than in the sentiment, that we mainly focused on the English sentiment at the time. Then went over to Workpop here in LA again, and we did 2 things there, technically 3 things that were really exciting to me. The 2 main ones, this little GIF demo, we have this thing called Smart Rank. So we said, okay, we have a bunch of people's applications. We have all of their information, all of their resume data. We also have a bunch of jobs. And then we're trying to figure out from the hiring manager, what is the best application to show for that job? Most of the time, you go on one of these job sites, you see things chronologically, but the likelihood that the person that most recently applied to your job is the best match for your job is, it's basically random. Like, you don't actually know that's the case. So we said, can we actually rank people based on how good a candidate they are for a particular role? We did a very simple TF-IDF, nothing fancy, but we essentially said, for each application, what makes them unique? So if you look at an application, you look at an entire corpus of applications, like if there's one person that has C++, then they're unique. If everybody in the world has Python, they're not unique. So if you have a job that also asks for C++, you rank the C++ person higher. If everyone puts Microsoft Office on there, it's not gonna make you stand out from anyone, which actually happens a lot in job sites. But so we did that. Worked really well. We got to the point where we had, I think it was 60 to 80% predictability on the top, that some hiring manager would favor 6 or 8 out of 10 top posts, top applications, versus like before you had like 2 or 3, or essentially random that someone that was a good match for their job was up there. So that was really cool, kind of woke me up to the AI space a little bit again. Then we played around with optimizing bids, didn't spend a ton of time on there, but really the thing that kind of woke me up for sure was chatbots. And I will say I'm not really using them today. I thought they were a bit of a fad, but it was just fun to go out there. And that's kind of when I realized how much the industry had changed. So over a weekend, our CEO was like, hey, like chatbots are getting a lot of press. Can we build one to help people find jobs? I was like, okay, I'll go play with it. And by the end of the weekend, I had a chatbot working. And it wasn't me going out and building out the models. It wasn't me figuring out some crazy algorithm or NLP. There were like 3 different competitors, or Wit.ai, API.ai, Microsoft Luis, which is not my namesake, but it's spelled the same way too. Try them all. Really, really wanted to use Microsoft Luis, but API.ai won out. It just had the best feature set. And you go in, create a script, and it trains on things over time. Like as you go in, you get chat logs. You can go and say, did this translate correctly? Did you pull the right entities here? You go map them all up, and it works. And that's when I was like, okay, this feels like it has gone from a an academic exercise, like this crazy like mental practice, to I can go and build something in production without having to build everything from scratch. There you go. So that made me really excited. So I was like, okay, I want to get back to the data space. I want to get back into the stuff that I've been doing. Left LA to start a company. Ended up not starting a company. One of the partners at Andreessen was like, well, if you're coming in, you want to do something in data AI, why don't you talk to Reddit? They have a ridiculous amount of data, a ton of stuff that they're not really leveraging right now. It's about 120 people, 40 engineers when I started. Told them no a few times. 3 months later, talking to Steve, Alexis, and the whole company, I got convinced that this was going to be a great foray into really doing production ML at scale. So real quick, what's Reddit? Some of you know, but I'm sure some of you don't, but it's, come on, oops, sorry. Since I'm here, I'm just going to use this. So Reddit is the 5th largest website in the US, according to Alexa rankings. It got up to 3rd. It varies up and down a little bit. Amazon and Wikipedia, I think, keep passing us, and then we pass them. 350 million users, million plus communities, 10.7 million posts. So a ton of content and a ton of people on there. This is actually, I mean, a lot of people know what Reddit is. A lot of people get surprised when they see how big it actually is. So what do you do with all of that power? Well, we have a lot of cat gifs. This is a cat fist pumping his owner. And actually, I hope I'm gonna send this video. So a fellow director of mine, so one of my going away dinners there, was saying bye to our head of design, who was also at this dinner. Head of design goes to give him a high five, and then he fist bumps the high five. So I thought of this thing. I was like, this cat is better at this than you are right now. But we've also got this cat who's taken to walking his owner. So clearly the tables have turned here. But it's not just cat pictures, right? Like there's some great funny stuff there, but we have this community called Confessions. So this is supposed to be, what if you revealed your deepest, darkest secret? Reddit gives you the pseudo-anonymity, so you can do these things. You've got this person says they cut off all content, move to Kenya, and tell people a fake name. So basically just fake their own death, and now they have their own new life in Kenya. We might have found Tupac. You've also got this person who used Reddit, or I guess who's confessing on Reddit to their strategy as to how they found their loved one. Now, I would not commend this strategy or condone this strategy, but they used to babysit their family's cat, I think it was, found a diary, read the diary, analyzed it, and used what they learned to get this person to marry them. You would probably not see this on other social networks where your face is like front and center and it's tied to your identity, right? We've also got things like our assistants where people will literally go and ask for something that they need, something that's important. Like this lady needed a kidney donor and found him on Reddit. So that's a lot of different varied content, right? Like you've got cats, you've got people finding like kidney donors, you've got people confessing their secrets. How do you get the content to the people that they're gonna try the most and they're really gonna resonate with? So back to 2006, this is what Reddit looks like. I didn't notice, I had this screenshot on slides for a really long time, and I didn't notice the yellow tab, how we're talking about how we learned based on your voting and existing links, and then we're gonna show you what's cool and popular. Didn't really learn anything at the time, but we said we did. Then there's this recommended tab though, which is where we really started to play with like, how can we recommend things to users? How can we figure out what a user wants to see, what they're gonna like? First things we tried, our CTO now, Chris Lowe, was actually working on a lot of this. He was one of the founding engineers at Reddit. We took upvotes, downvotes, and said, okay, let's go build a matrix of people's votes, downvotes, the content, and then figure out like what are similar content or similar users to show them what they want, right? So singular value decomposition based on upvotes and downvotes. Recentering on the mean, subtracting global mean, that line really just means that generally, people tend to like a set of things. The averages we're trying to get out, so we find out what you uniquely like. Similar to applications, if everybody feels the same way about something, we try to just move that out. So a few problems there, right? We didn't have categories or communities at the time. Reddit was all one big pile of content. The median number of votes for people was 1, so people weren't highly engaged or highly active. We still see things today, like in nearly every engagement thing we see out there, even on different sites, there's about 10% of the community that's really creating content and engaging with it, and then 90% that's consuming it. We had the same thing. And then we said, okay, maybe if you assign, we know a lot about that 10%, we don't know a lot about the 90, can we find buddies for the 90% so that we can recommend the same things to them as we do to their most similar person that is highly engaged? But Reddit was going too big. At some point, SVD didn't work anymore on the machine that we had under someone's desk, under Chris's desk, I actually think. And it was just a problem that, especially at the time, 2006, 2007, was too hard for a machine to solve. Turns out, though, actually I missed the cow thing I missed. So if you ever take physics, it's a little physics joke. If it works really well if you assume that a cow is just a spherical shape with radius r. That's kind of what we were doing for people. We were assuming you are all vectors, you're all some mathematical equation, and then if I do that, it works out great. I can find similarities, I can find content for you. Turns out you're not, but bots actually are. They're very similar to things like this, and we still use some really simple heuristics to figure out and detect bots, detect voting manipulation and behavior that you don't want on the site. So humans had to come in, right? So you might hear human in the loop a lot in AI, same thing here. This is when Reddit created subreddits. At first, it was everything on one content, one place. Now we actually have ways of essentially categorizing content. So if you go to our pics, it's going to be pictures. If you go to our all, it's usually cute animals. Let's see, cats standing up is literally cats standing up. R/Super Bowl is actually a bunch of really like good-looking and pretty owls. So they just spaced out the word differently. So at its core relevance, Reddit is a relevancy engine, right? So it used to essentially be people voting up, voting and down, voting, deciding what's hot, aggregating around some kind of categorization or content. ML lets you personalize that. So if you're doing the averages, if you're doing like what's popular across the whole internet, that's great, but it's not going to really find what you uniquely like or what you really care about and what you're really passionate about. ML lets us actually scale that. Because then we can take things and we can say, this is generally popular, but you like dogs, you like cats. I'm actually a dog person, so all these cats in this presentation get me a little bit antsy, but I'd rather see a bunch of cute dog pictures and a bunch of cat pictures, and we can build those algorithms, we can build those models that can learn and rank these things for you. So first thing that happened is they built a team. So this was part of the Reddit recruiting me, essentially. So early 2017, 150 people, 70 in engineering. We had 2 data engineers, 4 relevance engineers, no real ML discipline, no machine learning, no AI at the time. We started to rapidly grow it out and build a team. They hired me. I hired smarter people that actually get shit done. And this is actually what makes me really excited today, to be able to take on this new venture, to go off and step into new things and feel really excited about what the team is building behind, because we have an amazing team that's working on this now. And as our first step, you wrangle the data, right? Let me just check on that. So you can't really do much in AI ML if you don't have clean data. This is what the pipeline used to look like, essentially a pixels log off of Nginx. Not very useful. You can't really train anything on it. There's not a lot of metadata. So we had to build a real pipeline. Now, again, this is actually like 2017 when we're building this. You see a lot of interesting things here, a lot of names you might actually recognize. So BigQuery was one of the big bets that we took second half of last year. Getting all of our data in there and being able to do all of our analytics really fast without having to maintain Hadoop clusters, and Presto clusters for people. That was super helpful, but also this entire pipeline of how we collect data, enrich, go through ranking rules, and then store them in S3 for long storage, but also put them in BigQuery for things that we can analyze quickly. And then building out things with Airflow to even do our training pipelines, for example. The other thing you got to do is make that data easy to get to. This is a Reddit redesign. That's what it looks like if you go in, and I think we're out to they're out 6% of users now. It was hard to get to data before. You almost had to look at network logs in Chrome. It's built in now. You can go through, for developers, for internal users, can go in and see what experiments are we running, what kind of data are we collecting, what are we doing through it. So this is a pretty key lesson, right? Like if you want to do anything with data, which is a prerequisite to doing anything with AI, you have to make the data easy to get to, clean, and accessible. Other thing you got to do is put it in front and center of the whole org. So these are dashboards that you actually see a little bit of the tree map view on there, but there are things that you have to change the culture of the organization around to where data is at the primary decision maker. Data is how you're deciding whether you ship a feature or not, where you invest, where you don't invest. Because when you then go to convince someone that you're going to decide how you're going to rank the home feed of Reddit, the front page of the internet, based on some data algorithm, you already have to have done all of that pre-winning that data is important. Step 2, you run all those experiments. I'm going to step through a couple of them here. These are from some of them last year, some of them this year as well. We started out with subreddit similarities. This essentially took us back to that problem in 2007, 2008. We have a bunch of subreddits, we have a bunch of content. How do I know what to actually get to people? Like, how do I recommend things to people? That cold start problem of you drop on Reddit, what do you even see when you have no subscriptions? We started out looking at Jacquard similarities, worked out okay. Problem is it's an n-squared algorithm. We have a lot of subreddits. I think there's like a million plus I think we have, and even active ones are too high. It was just too slow to run, too slow to keep up to date. Subreddits change over time. The other problem is for a long time we had these default subreddits. So the original attempt at solving that cold start problem was we'll just give everybody the same 50 subscriptions to start and then they can go and edit it. Works fine. The problem is on any algorithm that's trying to detect similarities between subreddits based on subscribers, those 50 are the most similar subreddits of anything, and they dwarf everybody else. So we had to go in and clean a lot of that stuff up through humans in the loop as well. So then we said, okay, that was a cool first start. And actually, that was one of the lessons that I would say as well. Start simple, start early, and figure out, like, at least if the data works, right? Then we started looking at more interesting things. Can we do NLP to decide what a subreddit is about? So looking at subscribers is cool, but if I can actually read and understand the content of the subreddits, then I should be able to do a much better job at deciding and finding similar content. Doc2Vec is a pretty known industry standard. Pretty much you take a document, turn it into a vector, and try to find similarities and differences between those. You can do really cool things like subreddit algebra, and even say this subreddit minus this one equals this one. So you could say one subreddit is r/games, another one is ChewX chromosome, which is this big female community on the internet. And if you put them both together, you get girl gamers, which is a subreddit about girl gamers, which is pretty cool. So we started doing this. Each subreddit became a 300-dimensional vector. So we tried to find what are all the unique things about them. A lot of these dimensions are literally words. They're essentially the vocabulary that you're using to define a subreddit. Then you can go and figure out what's similar and what's close to each other there. You can also find clusters of similar subreddits, right? So when you do this, you can say, okay, what are all of the communities that are very close together in that vocabulary that we've defined? And then you have to go and humanly label them, but you can see all of these are subreddit names. So you've got health, you've got fitness, bodybuilding, weightlifting, gaming, emulation games, 3DS, cryptocurrency. It was so useful and so kind of cool to play with that we put a little UI around it. And then we actually codify that human in the loop piece. Reddit now has a Reddit cartographer. It's literally a person whose job it is to go and think of a mix between a librarian and a data analyst. That's this person's job to go and figure out, leveraging data, what is interesting, what is the subreddit taxonomy, what are the things that we're going to label them, and then how do we go and categorize everything. And then you can go on the site or in this internal site and say, okay, if given a subreddit, what's similar to it? So if I say r/Indiana, you get Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, makes sense of what you're getting there. If you put in a college football team, you get other college football teams, which is pretty cool. Machine learning, you get a bunch of subreddits about machine learning, math, stats, right? Then we said, okay, we got our first couple of easy tries, right? We did the first dumb thing around subreddits. Then we did something a little bit smarter around subreddits. Subreddits are a little bit easier to grasp because there's only about 1 million of them, 1.5 million, it's not that many. When you start thinking about how do I rank posts, how do I rank content, now you're in the hundreds of millions. Now you've got things that change daily, and a post popularity literally only lasts for about a day, then the next day something else is up there. So we said, okay, we've gotten our early wins. We know how that stuff works. Let's take on the big fish now. So started ranking the home feed. We have been ranking it with the same algorithm for about 12 years. If you're a Redditor, you might know it as the hot algorithm. Pretty much a heavily time decayed upvotes minus downvotes things. So we went through, we said, let's build a logistic regression model. Logistic regression is not that fancy. You see Francois Cholet is a big person in the data in the ML space. I love this little meme where you start out with you're not really that smart and you're using deep learning, and then you get smarter and smarter as you just simplify what you're doing. So Reddit's home feed right now is on step 2. Hopefully hash tables is the panacea. We'll get there one day. But and it's totally true. So we started logistic regression. It's actually pretty simple. This is literally what I was learning over 10 years ago. It's been talked about for more than a decade, actually a couple decades in the ML space. So it's nothing special, but it's really simple to understand and to debug and to know what the model is doing. If you start out from scratch and you go straight for deep learning, good luck to you. It may work, it may not work. Whether it works or doesn't work, I will bet you money you cannot explain why. It is a great tool. Deep learning is a fantastic tool. I'm not knocking on it. It is great to optimize things that you already have working, that you already understand. It's just not the first step you take. So we have about 10 terabytes of training data, 15 million features, 5 million parameters. Again, a lot of these big numbers are because we use little English words like vocabulary as features and parameters, or as features. And then we have multiple models being experimented. So as you're building these models, a lot of them depend on what features you use, how do you weigh them, how do you clean them up. So Do we care about time of day? Do we care about user? Do we care about how, when the user subscribed to Reddit? Like all of these things to decide what is the best thing to show them at a time. Then we started saying, okay, cool, home feed's working. It's getting some good wins. I'll talk through real quick about some of the results at the end. What else can we do here? So Reddit for pretty much forever has been a list of content, and you work your way down the list. And you can go through a different subreddit, and it's just another list of content. What we started doing instead was, okay, what if I started building a rabbit hole? Say you find a post. Can we use models to decide other similar posts that you might want to see? So if I land on a dog post and I really like dogs, I can see a bunch of posts about dogs. And then I can see different themes kind of branching off. Like maybe some are like puppy, like cute pictures. Maybe some are like, there's this whole subreddit r/master returns, which is like dogs going crazy excited when they see their owners after not seeing them for a while. Maybe you go down that path. And then there's some that are like working dogs. Like you might have like drug sniffing dogs or like people that, so there's different themes that you can go off. So we wanted to build that experience where you can kind of get stuck into this rabbit hole. That's actually a picture of the demo or the internal thing we had, by the way. So this was one post, what is the purpose of strapping a GoPro when skiing or snowboarding? And then you got some things about skiing, snowboarding, techniques about filming it, etc. So first thing we did, again, with the start at simple, we had to do it at Reddit scale. So there's a lot of recommendations. We want to pull in 50 recommendations. I think they've pulled it down to 10 now. And at about 3,000 screen views a second, so you have to do this fast. First iteration, text search. So we said text search itself as a stack. We rebuilt search early 2017 and modernized it. Works really well when you know what you're looking for. So instead of trying to build the crazy model from scratch that figures out all these similarities, let's just go and find a post, find the interesting words, right? What are the key value terms there? And then search for those terms and find the results out of search. That's actually what we have running an experiment right now and doing quite well. There was one last week, which was a post about how the EPA is lowering asbestos, I think, rules or regulations. And the first post was make asbestos great again from like a year ago, like someone making a joke about something. So that's where we started. But we also started looking at NLP and image deep learning. So we have this thing at Reddit called Snooze Day. Actually, it's about a week now. It's about a week's hackathon, and this week is when they're running it now. And one of our engineers for Snooze Day a couple quarters ago just did this image model that looks at an image and finds similar images to it. So you've probably seen in any like AI or ML tutorial out there, you see a dog, a bunch of dog pictures. So this are the kind of things that we'll probably move into as we start proving out some of these concepts. Step 3, we don't know yet, but step 4 is profit. This is actually, in the profit here, I'll say as like quantifying the results, right? Like we're not doing this to like stretch our mental like capacity. We're not doing this to play around or do a science fair. We actually need results. Like we're doing this because we feel that it's going to be a better user experience. So we look a lot on time spent on Reddit. This was a personalized ranking of the home feed. Green line is how much time people are spending. No y-axis because obviously can't disclose a lot of stuff there. But you can see clearly that the personalized ranking models are doing better than our control groups, which is the previous experience. Bottom one is actually subreddit recommendations. Orange is our machine learning model recommending subreddits. Blue is a whitelisted list, a randomized recommendation from a whitelisted list. Orange wins at everything except for these two. You can't really read them, but this is the hide button. So people saying don't recommend the whole carousel or don't recommend this subreddit to me. So that's where you'd want to lose as a model. We also look time and site between literature regression and some other person normalized models. Actually, the main point here is once you get one win, it doesn't stop there. Try out different models, keep iterating on it. At least understand what your knobs are, like what are your things that you want to switch around to know, or what is the next iteration you would take. Doesn't mean you go really deep down and try to get it all done in like a rabbit hole at once, but you should at least know what is your next step when you pick up this project again. You also want to look at retention. So one of the biggest concerns at Reddit is that we don't want to build a bubble. So even though I am a dog person, I don't want every single thing on my feed to be dogs, right? I want to get thrown a cat sometimes. I want to have this this opposing view set because Reddit is about conversations, right? It's supposed to be the place for conversations on the internet. And to have conversations, you have to have two different sides of the opinion. We look at retention as one of our ways to track that at least we're not over-optimizing for that sugary content, and then people will just drop off later because they get bored. And last couple slides here. This is literally the only slide about Novi because it started this month. But the idea about Novi is, can we take all of these things that we've been talking about, this whole presentation, can we take that and apply it to the financial world? I've been doing this, I'm a fintech nerd, or I'm a finance nerd, so I've been doing this forever myself and for my friends. Like, I'll go and like fix up their finances, figure out their, how to consolidate their debt, how to make sure which debt gets paid first, like redoing their loans, and then figuring out their savings and then investments, right? Getting that full kind of life cycle. Essentially what I'm doing is being like this cheap version of a private wealth advisor. So if you have a couple $1 million of net worth, you can pay someone a bunch of money to figure out your whole financial life cycle to you. It's not just investing in stock, that there's a few robo-advisors out there. It's actually figuring out, like, when your paycheck comes in, what is the best and most optimal thing for you to do with that money? A lot of that is heuristics. And a lot of that is actually building some AI and algorithms to decide, based on all the attributes we know about you and your financial situation, when you want to retire, where you live, what is the best thing to do for every single dollar coming in. So that's the plan at Novi. I'll wrap up here, and I think we got a couple, 3 minutes for questions. Perfect. Thank you.
Go ahead and raise your hand if you have any questions, and we'll come to you with the mic.
So in your time at Reddit, were you able to sort of identify any factors that contributed to were you able to identify any the factors that contribute to the sustainability of like a subreddit? Like, there's one for corgis, and there's one which is even more specialized for baby corgis.
Yeah.
So, I mean, whereas if you tried to specialize, say, quantum physics, right, you probably wouldn't get that many takers. So.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting. So we didn't do we meaning the data side of things, the engineering side of things. I know our community team has done a lot of thinking around how do you foster communities, like how do you get like a tiny community to be able to grow and be like sustainable. And that doesn't mean get big, like some of them could actually grow and stay small for a while. So you don't have the actual, I don't have actual like numbers or metrics. A couple of things that we've noticed, I mean, the moderators are a huge part of it. So if you don't know Reddit, like moderators are the people that actually grow and set the community rules and run those. They're a really important subset of our users, right? Because they make sure that the conversation stays good, stays civil, that it grows over time. And then whether it's a small subreddit, actually there's a bunch of subreddits called baby bumps. So women that are expecting will actually create these subreddits, and women that are expecting around the same month or same year. So you have these cohorts of women that are going to go through the same things at the same times, and those aren't going to be huge. You're not going to get millions or billions of people in those, right? But you have this really small but highly engaged community that works out well. So I don't have an answer, but we know that there's a lot of different archetypes on it. And there's a lot of time being spent. It's more on the human side of things versus the engineering and AI side of things, and how do we foster that and grow that further. All right, one more.
One more question. Okay. Yeah, just one more question because we're hitting up close to time.
I wonder if you could talk about data monetization at Reddit. So if you're identifying a lot of trends, I imagine you can sell those to aggregate trends to marketers and elsewhere in business. And I'm wondering, how much is that discussed, or is it just not something Reddit wants to do at all?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk to like my experience there. So I'm not there now, so I don't know what the today's state is. But I know that it's not the financial model, or the business model for Reddit is advertising. So it's not data. We don't have a similar Firehose API that we monetize very heavily as some competitors do. So it's not really it's not the strategy that we're going after. Reddit is also very conscious on user privacy. You can create an account without an email. You don't have to tell us how old you are, your gender. You don't have to tell us anything, which we think is actually good and sets us in a really good space, especially in today's environment. But at least I could say it's certainly not the path that Reddit is trying to go to as a business, at least. But. Cool. Thank you.
So thank you, Luis, for
Thank
your
you.
time. And here's a shot glass.
Oh, nice.
And a certificate.
Wait,
oh,
what?
and everyone stay real quick. Just a few announcements.
Why is the shot glass empty, though?
So you can refill it with what you like.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. So everybody, please, first of all, if you haven't already, download the meeting app so you can find where you're going to go next.